Hi everyone, welcome to the Geek Mind. Today we will talk about setting up the Postgres database container. We will cover how to instantiate the Postgres Docker container, create a couple of tables there, insert records, and finally see the database schema using DBeaver. Assuming you already have the Docker desktop installed, let's get into the first part to instantiate the Postgres Docker container. To instantiate the Postgres Docker container, we need to run docker create command on the Postgres Docker image. That will be docker create. I will name the name of the container as Postgres demo. I will also set the password using the environment variable. That will be -e. Name of the variable is Postgres password, and I will set it as welcome. We can also set other variables like username and the database name, but we can skip that because if we don't do so, the values will be just defaulted to the Postgres. Now the port mapping is coming. Postgres inside the container by default listens on the container port 5432. And for the simplicity, I will map the same port number onto our local machine. Mapping 5432 on our machine to the container port 5432. And finally provide the name of the Docker image, Postgres. Now hitting enter. The Postgres image was not found locally, so it shall be pulling from the registry. Boom. Now the container is created as the name, the Postgres demo, with the port that we specified. The status is indicating that it is created but not running yet. So make sure that you have the container running before interacting with the database. You can do so by clicking this arrow button under the action. Now that we instantiated the Postgres container, let's create a couple of tables into the database. To create tables, we first need to transfer the SQL file from our local file system into the container and then execute it. Here is an example SQL file that includes already a couple of create tables commands. This query is going to execute a couple of commands to create tables like customers, products, invoices, and others. Now I will move this local file into the container that we just created. I will do so using the docker cp command, which stands for the copying. I provide the name of the file that I want to move, which is create tables SQL. What comes next is the name of the container that we just created, which is Postgres demo. And as the last piece, we provide the target path in the container where our local file will be copied into. For simplicity, I will provide the same name as our local file, and since this path does not exist yet in the container, the new file path will be created. I just hit enter. It says the file has been successfully copied into the container that we created and the path that we just provided. Then let's see if the file has really been moved into the container. I will do so by getting into the Docker shell. Docker exec -it, and I provide the name of the container, shell. Now we are inside the container shell and see the list of files. And there it is, the create table SQL. To just check if this is the same file that we wanted to copy. And we can see that it is going to create the tables customer, products, invoices, and others. Now that we've moved the SQL file into the container, let's execute it. I am still inside the container shell, and the command will be starting with the psql, which is the command line tool that allows us to interact with the Postgres database. Since our container is instantiated from the Postgres Docker image, the PostgreSQL client is already available, and hence this magic keyword will be recognized. What follows this is the name of the database, starting with -d. And since we haven't specified the name of the database when creating the Postgres Docker container, the value was just defaulted to the Postgres. Now we provide the name of the file that we want to execute, and it should be the SQL file that we just moved to our container. And that is starting with -f create table SQL. And we also need to provide the name of the user, which is starting with -U. And since also we haven't specified the name of the user when creating the container, it was also defaulted to Postgres. I will now hit enter. All right, it says there are 5 tables created, but if we'd like to see it more visually, we probably can use the tool like DBeaver to see the database schema. I have the DBeaver open, and let's make the connection to our database container. Ctrl+Shift+N, and I want to make connection with a Postgres. When I select it, it already knows the port number would be 5432, and the username is Postgres. This is the default one because we haven't specified it when creating the database, and the password we need to provide it. It was the welcome. Now I will establish the connection. Now one connection just appeared, and if I go inside to see the schema, here it goes. We can see that the 5 tables are correctly created. For example, invoice items, invoice, customers, etc. Those tables that were included in the creating table query. Now let's repeat the same process for inserting the records. I will go first out of the container shell. Let's then now move this insert data SQL file to the container and then execute it. This is going to be exactly the same process as we just did. Let's move it, Docker CP, it stands for the copying, and now we provide the name of the file that we want to move, which is insert name of the container and the target file or target path inside the container. Now it has successfully been moved. Let's check that. Here it is. We can see that the second file has been correctly moved into the container. Now let's execute it as well, starting with psql, and the name of the database is again the Postgres, since we haven't specified it when creating the container, and the file that we want to execute is insert data SQL. Finally, providing the name of the database user. Great, it says the insertion happened. Now let's take a look then into the DBeaver. If you expand further the schema, you are going to see the list of tables there, and if you hit the right click, there is the option here that is reading data in the SQL console. When I hit that, I can see that the records are correctly inserted, and now our database is fully set up. All right, I think that was it for today. We learned about setting up the Postgres database container, starting from instantiating the Postgres Docker container, creating tables, inserting records, and seeing the database schema using DBeaver. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I guess we will see in the next one.